Okay, so here we have a review of Marxism and the family. So just to recap the theory as a whole, it's a macro theory, so it's large scale, it's structural, and individuals are controlled by capitalism, and it's a conflict theory based on inequality between two social classes. Capitalism is the main issue within Marxism. So they talk about capitalism a lot, but just to highlight, they do not like capitalism. And capitalism is financial profit over human need, and it's pursuit of money. Now, Marxists talk about how society is divided between two social groups, two social classes. The bourgeoisie, who would be the ruling class, or the upper classes, middle classes, who have power, wealth and status. They own the factories, what we would call the means of production. The proletariat do not own anything other than their ability to work. They can sell their labour, their time to capitalism in order to survive and get some money from the bourgeoisie. Now, Marxists do not regard the traditional nuclear family or nuclear families as functionally necessary for society. So the family is not a universal or necessary institution, as we saw in functionalism. For Marxism, the family is a tool of capitalism. It reinforces social control, reproduces inequality, and it encourages consumption of commodities, producing money for capitalism. If you got rid of capitalism, you wouldn't need the family, and in this way. Now, our first figure here is Engels from 1884. Now, Engels highlighted the monogamous nuclear family. So this is one man or one wife or two partners, and they're monogamous. They do not sleep with other people. So again, he said that this monogamous nuclear family developed as a means of protecting property and money. Part of this is linked to monogamy, so the idea that you can prove paternity of a child, because again, if you're in a monogamous relationship, you're not having extramarital affairs, then there's no sort of question about who parents children. And ultimately, what Engels highlighted was women's position in this role is not that different from prostitution. So it's a financial deal struck between the man and the woman. She will provide children and sex for him in return for economic security. And ultimately, what this means is the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor, and this keeps classes divided. And that is worth recognising that this is criticised as an outdated view of the family, particularly like notions of people get married for love and inheritance isn't as essential anymore. Now, Altazer in 1971 talked about how the family was used to teach the working class to submit to ruling class ideas or the bourgeoisie's ideas and to support capitalism. And ultimately, the family is an ideological state apparatus, and it teaches social control. So the family is part of the superstructure of society, and through socialization and through those ideas being passed, it creates a false consciousness where we accept inequality. It reproduces these values generation after generation, and it ensures the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, maintain control, and we don't question the sort of the state of society. We just go through it. Is what we consider to be a normal is normal for us. So ultimately, the family is part of superstructure and has an ideological function benefiting capitalism. Now, Zoretsky came along in 1976 and he talked about, again, on the ideological front, that the family has an ideological function in propping up capitalism and again produces the false consciousness. So part of this, he links in the idea of primary socialization and parental power over children. So paternal power is key. Parents control children. That prepares us for a life where we will be controlled and told what to do by employers and sort of for the rest of our lives. Family also looks and acts as a buffer zone, so a safe haven, a place where men can come home after a hard day of work, being exploited and oppressed by their ruling class employers, and they can have some control, they can have power. It de-stresses them, calms them down, and they return to work the next day, and that means that they then will continue working for the bourgeoisie. It prevents them venting their anger at the bourgeoisie, leading to revolution. It's a very similar process to the warm bath theory, but ultimately capitalism benefits as opposed to society. And then last but not least, we have Donzelot. The Donzelot talks about state control over working class families, and again, a bit like Altazer, where it's the family is controlled. Whereas Altazer was an ideological control, so it was indirect. For Donzelot, it is a direct control. So the family and the state intervene in family working. So policies, professionals who are associated with the state, so doctors, teachers, social workers, healthcare visitors, they will intervene in family life if it's not doing a sufficient or good enough job. And also they take direct control. And ultimately, poorer families are targeted because they're seen as the ones more likely to engage in crime and antisocial behaviour. And there we have it, family in